Monday presents a 7-game slate around the NBA. Tons of huge tournaments available for you to enter over on DraftKings. And here to price check salaries and share some of their studs and value plays this evening is DraftKings contributors Nick Friar and Matt Meiselman. Favorite guard over 7K. Let's start with you, Nick.
Terry Rozier is one that jumps out to me big time. Of course, the Milwaukee-Charlotte game has the highest total on DraftKings Sportsbook. And while I think LaMelo Ball is the quality option with Drew Holiday still out for the Bucks, Terry Rozier has been providing much more value, similar fantasy output. He's been fire from deep lately, 215 for his last 26, and he just dropped 45 DK fantasy points on the Bucks on Saturday. Another guy who I know is kind of outside the rules a little bit, just right there though, is Seth Curry at 6.6K versus the Rockets, and that is also one of the higher game totals tonight. And he's coming off back-to-back 40-plus DK fantasy point outings with his usage rate. And he's in a situation where his usage rate has been at 23%. That's with out Tyrese Maxey and Shake Milton on the floor. So both of those guys are legitimate options tonight. But if we're just strictly talking over 7K, Terry Rozier is the guy I think who's going to give you the best value tonight.
Man, James Harden sitting their highest priced guard. Matt, 10-5.
Yeah, I think it's tough for Harden with Kyrie Irving back to really expect him to have massive fantasy games. Obviously, there's a chance, but it's just a little less likely with Kyrie playing. That is one of a few games tonight where we do have to worry about a blowout. And the others, Philly is playing Houston. And then the one I think people will be scared of the most is the Jazz against the Pistons. For me, Donovan Mitchell makes for a really good GPP play because that's the game I think people are going to look away from due to the blowout the most. There's some value plays in those other two games with bigger spreads. But with Mitchell, what we see is with Rudy Gobert out of the lineup, the Jazz aren't going to be able to blow out teams as easily. And the games also just get higher paced because you don't have Gobert there playing really good defense. So I think it actually helps the Jazz from a fantasy perspective that Rudy Gobert isn't playing. Game stays closer. I think Mitchell should have to do more.
All right, Matty, take us to forward here. Give me a guy north of $7,000 you like.
So this is going to be kind of the chalk call here, but Giannis Antetokounmpo with Drew Holiday out. I just think this matchup and the situation that the team is in, like, there are some chalk pay-up options, and he's the one that I think you just kind of have to have because they're so shorthanded, and it's the best matchup possible. Like, there are teams that are worse at defense than the Charlotte Hornets, but the combination of bad defense, really high pace, and then also being good enough at offense where you don't have to worry about a blowout too much. I mean, the Bucks are only 2-point favorites in this game. They actually just lost to the Hornets 2 days ago. So Giannis is both forward and center eligible. I think because there were a lot of good center plays on this slate, you probably want to play him at forward. So this is probably the spot. I think you can find contrarian value plays. I think you can be contrarian elsewhere. Giannis is the one chalk guy, though, that I kind of think you need to play.
Dude, at least 52 fantasy points in his last 5 games, including 2 that hit the 70-point mark. Yeah, I mean, kind of feels like pin up for him wouldn't be a bad idea. Nick, what about you, man? Forward over 7K.
Yeah, I think Giannis is absolutely one of the better options tonight. But again, Matt was talking about how he might be a little bit chalky. I think Domantas Sabonis is another guy who you could pivot to, who's still a high-priced option at 10.3K going up against the Celtics. The big thing for him tonight is you got to monitor the status of Malcolm Brogdon. He is questionable tonight. In the situations without Brogdon and LeVert on the floor this season, Sabonis is averaging 1.23 DK fantasy points per minute. And I know the Celtics have been tough on opposing bigs from a fantasy standpoint, but Sabonis just had 58 fantasy points and then 64 in his last 2 games. So he's a guy I like a lot tonight. Evan Mobley is another one, too, if you're trying to find a cheaper option at forward, also center eligible at 7.3K versus the Kings. That's a team that has not done well against power forwards or centers this season. And Mobley, since the final day of 2021, has been providing largely 5 times value at this price point.
All right, Nick, let's go to favorite center here over 6K. I know Matt mentioned earlier Giannis has that center availability as well. And, man, the Hornets pretty bad on the defensive end net rating there against power forwards and centers.
Yeah, I mean, I like, of course, you got to like Giannis to do well tonight in some capacity, right? And he was a guy who was on my short list, of course. It would be stupid not to have that be the case because he just had 70 DK fantasy points against the Hornets on Saturday. But ultimately, Joel Embiid is the guy I'd rather pay up for tonight if I'm going to go and get for my high price guy at 11K against the Rockets. And I understand the concern about this being a blowout, but he just dropped 72.75 DK fantasy points on the Rockets last time out. And he's in a situation where his usage rate is absolutely absurd. I talked about it with Seth Curry a little bit, but it's even more ridiculous for Embiid. Without Maxey and Milton on the floor this season, Embiid has a 41.3 usage rate. So, I mean, I can't ignore that. What he already did against the Rockets recently, just over a week ago, that happened. And this still has one of the highest totals on the DraftKings Sportsbook tonight as well. So Embiid is my favorite center tonight.
All right, who do you like, Matty, at center?
So my answer to the question is I don't think there's a center you need to have because there are a lot of good ones, and you can only roster, I guess, two of them, one at utility spot, one at the center spot. Yusuf Nurkic is the guy that I think is the best points per dollar play at 7,000. But I'm going to go with Bobby Portis at 6,800 as the GPP guy because Nurkic is in a game where you definitely could see the Nets just blow out the Blazers. Kyrie's playing. The Nets are a really good team. Portland is missing a lot of guys. So with Portis, what you get is lower ownership because I think you'll see plenty of Joel Embiid. Giannis at center, probably some people play that. You have Sam Whiteside, you have Nurkic. And then Portis gives you a bit of leverage off Giannis. Like he does a lot of the same stuff statistically that Giannis does. So if you want to get a little bit different in tournaments, it's not that no one's playing Bobby Portis. Maybe he's 15%, 10%, somewhere in that range. But $6,800 is probably a little bit more than people want to pay for Portis. But I do think that's a little too cheap given how shorthanded the Bucks are. They don't have DeMarcus Cousins around either. That's kind of a big deal. Portis needs to do a little bit more. So I think he makes for a pretty good play in tournaments.
All right, before you guys take off, hook us up with your best value play under $4,500, Matt.
So I'll stick with center for this just because I just mentioned that there are a lot of them. With the Sacramento Kings, they don't have Rashawn Holmes, who's still in health and safety protocols, and they don't have Damian Jones, who is now out too. So they have two centers left. It's Alex Len and Tristan Thompson, and they're going up against the Cleveland Cavs, who you need to play a center against. When the Kings just played the Lakers, LeBron was the center. You could just play Metu, you play Bagley at center. You don't really need that. But Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, you need centers against them. Alex Len started last night and was good, but I think Tristan Thompson has a chance to start tonight. The game did not go well for Sacramento, even though Len was good from a fantasy perspective. Tristan Thompson's $3,500, and he's also in a 10 o'clock game where if he gets announced as a starter late in the night, I don't think too many people are going to get there, especially having already locked up their center slots. So Thompson's my guy if he starts, but I think there's a good chance he does. He's only 3,500.
It's been an interesting week for him off the court. Nick, who do you like? Value play under 4,500.
Yeah, when you go down to a 4.2K, there are two guys that jump out. Lance Stevenson is one who I would assume is going to be chalky if Brogdon is out tonight. That's the only situation I would want to play him, and he's done really well in those situations. But Lonnie Walker is the guy who I like a little bit more because we're not worried about so much about the status of his teammates because we already know Derek White, Keldon Johnson, and Doug McDermott are all out. And we saw what he did yesterday against the Nets. 20 shots in that game, 25 points, 39.75 DK fantasy points. I care more about the volume in this situation. Of course, you hope that the rest of that maintains or even improves. But if you're getting that kind of volume at this price going up against the Knicks, I can't turn that down.